All right. There's a lot going on this week, Eric. I'm seeing so many like silly season stories. I thought the silly season was over. First of all, it sounds like it never began. What would be considered like the big story? Is it would it be I think there's a disagreement with Stuart Haas and a few other things. Would that be the biggest story?
I'd say right now, yeah. I don't see anything changing. It sounds like everything was supposed to be status quo, and then Tony Stewart of the Stewart Haas part wants Ryan Preece in a Cup car, which we knew all along.
Okay,
he was signed for this deal.
Over who?
Well, what I think was originally going to happen. You remember when Eric Almirola back about a little over a year ago, or a little bit less than a year ago, I should say, was supposed to he announced this was his last season. He was going to retire, and he was going to be done. I heard all along, Preece was going to be the driver to replace him.
Okay.
And remember, right, Preece has ran a few Xfinity Series starts, Truck Series starts, kind of part-time, but he's a Stewart Haas development driver. So he was supposed to be in that car, I believe, in 2023. But when Almirola flipped and said, I'm coming back, I think that kind of left them, well, wait a minute, what are we going to do with him? And then the next option was, well, Kevin Harvick, 2023 is when his contract's up. 2023 could be the last year of Almirola again. Maybe that's where we use him. Maybe we just stash him for another year, and then we could put him there. Well, Gene Haas, the other part of Stewart Haas, doesn't want to use him yet. He wants to just leave it status quo, because the president of Stewart Haas Racing, so you got Gene Haas, Tony Stewart, president is Joe Custer, who is old Custer's dad.
Uh-huh.
So if you've got Chase Briscoe's in the round of 8, you're not getting rid of him. Kevin Harvick's here through 2023. You're obviously not getting rid of him. And Eric Almirola just announced that he's going to be back next year. You're not getting rid of him. Well, who's the odd man out? It'd be Cole Custer. So I think that's where the friction now is coming. Like, well, wait a minute, where this Preece thing comes from.
What do you think is going to happen? Do you think this is it makes more sense that Custer just stays on, right, for another year?
I think it does, because you're in a potential for next season. I think Eric Almirola, if he runs next year like he did this year, I don't see him coming back in 24, especially when he thought this year was going to be his last year anyways. Kevin Harvick, I truly believe, will be done. He seems so frustrated. He just doesn't seem like himself like he used to be as far as on-track performance. He's been good in the Fox Sports booth. I think he just retires after next season, because he's not going to go. It's not like he's going to go to Gibbs or Hendricks or something like that.
All right.
So that would leave you 2 seats open. Do you really want to lose Custer and maybe his dad and have 3 seats open? I think you probably just leave it alone. Maybe merge, because they already have an alliance with Rick Ware Racing. Maybe throw Preece in that car and make it kind of like your de facto 5th car for a year, and then move him over.
All right.
But I think it's going to stay status quo. There's too many things far down the line. It's already October 18th. Like, I don't see how you're just going to all of a sudden magically punt Cole Custer out. It just doesn't make any sense.
And is Kurt Busch, is he going to officially retire? He's done, right?
Not fully. If he comes back,
it's not going to be full time.
Door open. Yeah, he's not retired. That's why he didn't use the word retire. He said that's why his family wasn't at that press conference. He's not retiring. He's just hoping that he can race in some races again. I think to me, it sounds like he's going to do like what Jimmy Johnson's going to do next year, and just run anything and everything he wants to.
But he's not contending for championships anymore.
Not anymore. No, I think that if there's any kind of retirement, you want to say maybe retiring from full time. But he's going to be, if he can get cleared, would be part-time. He's done, which made the sense, like we've been saying all along. Richard Childress Racing is not going to go acquire a 3rd charter and spend 8 figures. He got bought out. So it's not surprising. So basically now, most of 2023's driver lineups are pretty much solidified, other than we know Gibbs is going to bring up Ty Gibbs for the 18th. There's no reason to believe that. So it's not formally announced, but past that, pretty much all done.
And the big story, of course, coming out of Las Vegas, Bubba Wallace, Kyle Larson. It's kind of interesting that when you listen to some of the national shows, because the national shows who never cover NASCAR unless there's some sort of fight, Sort of like hockey. They're not going to cover hockey unless there's something negative about it. So same thing with NASCAR. But what I don't hear, because they really haven't followed the story long enough because they're not NASCAR people, is they're not referencing the fact that Kyle Larson was suspended for racist remarks. And how did that come into play with Bubba Wallace being a little bit maybe over aggressive against Kyle Larson? Maybe no reason, but maybe a big reason.
Yep, and it's something we probably at this point won't know. I'm shocked they haven't dove into that yet, but yeah, I mean, I look at what Bubba did, and it's like, come on, we've all been there. Somebody cuts you off on the road, but the key is every time something happens, especially on the road, you turn into defensive driving. Let me not get in a wreck. Let me let this person in. I don't like it, but I'm going to be mad at them when they get in front of me. Maybe you use a one finger salute. However, you don't wreck the person because then you damage both of you. I thought it was a very immature move Bubba made.
Sure.
And what I don't like is all of a sudden you see NASCAR Twitter, all these wannabe fans and these so-called media people like, well, they didn't do this punishment for this circumstance in 2013. Or it's like, I didn't hear anybody talking about Noah Gragson this way they do, but it's like these are all separate instances. This one is it's relevant in a sense. Bubba's teammate is out with concussion-like symptoms since July, and just announced the day before that he's stepping away, like we just talked about, from full-time racing. Kyle Larson's teammate has been out for 4 weeks now with concussion-like symptoms due to this car. They had a 75-minute meeting, again, Saturday, to go over safety for the 2023 version of this next gen and trying to make it safer. It was also 11 years to the day that Dan Weldon died in an IndyCar wreck. It was the last IndyCar driver to die in a wreck on that same track. And he made the move to purposely punt Kyle Larson, because we know that's what he was doing. He could say, like, oh, my throttle stuff or steering. We know what you were doing. And that's where this is different. That is where this one separates from the rest, is because this, as Joey Logano said on NASCAR radio this morning, that he could have killed Kyle Larson. The way this car is, and we've seen, Bowman's wreck looked like nothing. If Larson doesn't hit Christopher Bell, who, oh, by the way, is a Toyota driver who you took out of you might force him into a must-win over these next 2 weeks. If he doesn't hit that car, he's going rear end first at a high rate of speed. Who knows what would have happened? So that's where this is different than those. And it was an uncalled for, and we'll see what NASCAR announces.
What do you think they're going to do? Or what should they do?
Honestly, I think a hefty fine. I don't know. You're going to do the typical fine and points penalty. I know that.
What is the points penalty going to do?
But exactly, because that car, remember though, that car is in the Owners' Championship.
Oh yeah, the thing we don't care about. That's right.
No, but remember how that his action could take that car pretty much to last in this race.
Good.
But I think that you'll see that.
Uh-huh.
I honestly think you park him for the rest of the round. 2 week suspension to let him come back at Phoenix. I think you get his attention that this is uncalled for. We're not going to stand by this, that you should have known better, because the other factor is NASCAR has the data. They know whether he sped up, turned. They have the S&T that he almost made him look silly by lying about it. I get it. You don't want to come out and
you have to lie. You have to.
Yeah, because of the William Byron situation. But NASCAR is not going to be made a fool out of this. I think you have to send, because probably about a decade ago, Kyle Busch purposely wrecked Ron Hornaday hard at Texas in a truck race and was suspended a week. So I think since this is the round of 8, there's 2 rounds left. I think you park him for 2 weeks. Let him think about it. Let him know that that's not how you race.
Do you think they'll make a decision? Did they say they're going to make a decision this week?
Penalties are always announced late Tuesday afternoon, so we'll know today. We'll know what happens today. And either way, unfortunately, it's
maybe what they should just do is to say he gets to race this race, and then that's it. Season's over.
Yeah, you could do that too, because he's a polarized topic. People want to go watch him. He's got fans too. So
if you're going to do 2 races, you might as well just let him race one more, and then season's over.
Yeah, honestly, I would park him for the season, but the only reason I said 2 is to let him sit the round. But either way, NASCAR again is in a tough spot, because if you don't penalize him, people are going to say it's favoritism.
Of course.
Michael Jordan's team. He's the only African American driver in the field.
Absolutely.
Gave him leeway. if you penalize them too much, you're racist. Why are you doing this against him? Why are you picking on him? You didn't do this in this situation. So if you just kind of, we'll just do it in the middle. You won't penalize them as heavy. Then they're going to be like, well, why didn't you penalize them hard enough? You didn't. So it's
one race is probably what they'll do.
That's what I think at the end of the day, 100-point penalty, maybe $100,000 fine, and a one race suspension.
Other than that, for the fans, that's all good stuff. They just have to make sure that the car is safe. Because as we said last week, whatever you do, you got to make the car safe. Great. Don't screw up the competition of the car. Don't do anything where we got to go backwards. I forget which site it was. It's a pretty popular NASCAR site. And somebody was commenting about, and it sounded to me, I should probably get it up here. It sounded to me like he was commenting about how boring the racing was, which I did not understand what in the world he was talking about. So I actually made a comment about it. Trying to see which one was it. Let me see if this is it. There's the site is called, is this the one I went? After the Checkered Flag. So it's a semi-popular site. Okay, so here's the top comment that got the most replies. Congratulations, NASCAR, because the story was shocking admission by Jeff Gordon and JGR Perez freak out Dale Jr. and our NASCAR's latest black guy, and they were talking about, I guess, the let's see. History will show NASCAR had more than a few ugly moments during the Cup Series season. The first year in the next-gen car, the new car itself was problematic, blah, 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 blah. So it's about the new car. So the first comment was, congratulations, NASCAR. We went from not wanting to get up to go to the bathroom and grab a beer to going out and cutting the grass in the middle of a race. 2 thumbs up. So some of the replies were absolutely perfect post, almost every weekend. So I replied, because it sounded like they were all agreeing with this guy. And I just replied, I'm confused. Are you trying to, basically, are you trying to tell me that you believe the racing this season is, the racing that we had before, the dominating one car every week racing is better than what we saw this year? Now, I haven't gotten a response yet, which is strange. I don't know why nobody's going back at me, but there are people out there that actually think that are slamming the next gen car and think that the racing this season is no good.
Yeah, I don't get that.
Have you heard that?
I haven't, because maybe my head's been in the sand, but to me, the naked eye says it all. There's more passing, there's closer finishes. You've got parity. They're all unpredictable. I could go on and on. All the metrics are up. Green flag passes for the lead.
Look, NASCAR seems to be strangling themselves. I went from spending hours watching a race on Sundays to catching the highlights the next day. What in the world? What else do they want?
I don't know, because I got a sheet here that I keep track of the stats, and let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 straight races that the leader, 13 of the last 14 races, the winner has only led laps in the final stage. So I don't sure what they're talking about, because if you go, let's just say you watch the start and go cut your grass, and I'll give you an hour and a half, cut your grass, most average probably yard, and you come back inside, more than likely the lineup's a lot different than what it was when you went outside than it is when you came in inside. So I'm not real sure where they're getting that.
I think these are real old timers. Have to be. Let's see. Thanks to NASCAR, I spent a lot more time watching dirt racing. If there is ever a World of Outlaws or other big dirt series race pitted against NASCAR, I'm watching dirt. NASCAR turned its back on the fan base and decided to go from racing to a TV show. I wish we could bring back the time where a group of friends could build a cup car in the garage and try to qualify for Daytona. These got to be 70-year-old,
old school. Yeah.
old time racing fans that just don't understand where the sport's gone for some reason. And
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe I can understand it from their point of view, but I don't know what they were enjoying unless they did just enjoy the roots of it, the let's all get together and do the, the kind of, like he was saying, let's just build a car and we can race it on but that's, I mean, come on, what are you got to grow up, man? I mean, that's not the 50s. We're not in the 40s anymore.
No, and that racing, and yeah, you want to go back to that era, then look on TV and go watch one of those on YouTube. And you had, 3 cars on the lead lap, maybe half of them running at the finish, and that wasn't exciting. It was exciting then, but it's a different era. It's a different era now than what it was then. It's not even close. So that will single-handedly kill off any TV ratings, crowd attendance, because if you want to grow the sport, think about that. If you have, let's just say 3 cars on the lead lap, if you're a new fan, what would make you want to watch the next week?
Yeah.
What about a boring? Those races are like watching 42-7 blowouts on NFL every week, thinking you're good. It doesn't happen anymore, and there's a reason they regulate that. One is for cost, is it helps the teams, and 2, you want parity. You don't want the teams to just outspend everybody and show up with what they brought. And that day and age is long gone. It's decades ago, and people still bring it up. It's like, so I've always said there's a fine line between a traditionalist and a new fan, and there's somewhere in the middle to appease them both. And the heavy traditionalists are going to be the ones that are going to go by the wayside. There's no room for you anymore.
Yep.
If you want to go off your ways will kill the sport, and you won't have a sport to watch, is what at the end of the day. So if this next gen was supposed to help, and by large margins it has. The only detriment is
safety.
Crash is the safety, which they're working on.
Yeah.
That's the main thing they're working on.
Yep.
So you can't do anything about it right now. There's only 4 races left.
No.
Next year, if that is safe, then what more do you want?
Yeah, it's exactly what we've been bitching about on this show for the last few years. So we got what we wanted. Everything's not perfect. We still think there's things like the dirt race, which these guys probably love, and other things.
Well, it tells me a lot too when people say it. Again, I'm not trying to call these guys out when they say a dirt race, a World of Outlaws going against NASCAR. Well, must not be a very big World of Outlaws or NASCAR fan to know World of Outlaws race on a night, because dirt tracks work at night, and NASCAR doesn't really run much at night. And World of Outlaws usually run on Saturday night, and you don't really have much comparison between the two. So I kind of call out their fandom in general. Like, how much are you a fan when you don't even know the schedule? So it tells me you don't really watch to begin with.
Look, it's frustrating watching, like, for instance, and I've been saying this for like the last 6 or 7 weeks regarding my fantasy situation. It only takes one bad week.
Yep.
And I had my bad week, and I was leading the fantasy standings for 80% of the season, and in 1 week,
at least
I'm in
the last
second.
several months.
Yeah. And it happened also in a situation where I'm watching Ryan Blaney in a perfect situation where it looks like, you know what? I think he's going to win this race.
Mm-hmm.
And then what has been happening all season is you just never know what lap, what minute, what second that a car that looks like they might be the best car that day, something happens. Something goes wrong and wipes him out. And that is part of the parity. You have to deal with it. I was more frustrated than ever watching that, because I have money on him to win the championship. I had money on him to win the race. It looks like everything's working out. And then just in a blink of an eye, it all goes away for no reason. That's the car. That's the season. That's what's happening. Didn't happen to your guy maybe 3 weeks ago or for the past 5 weeks. It'll eventually catch up to everybody. And that's the season we're having. And that's the thing you just have to live with. You can love it, and I do, but you're going to have to live with those types of days and those types of races and those types of situations. It's part of it.
And that's where it goes, like Chase Briscoe a few weeks ago, or even Chase Elliott, when he said, you just live with the ups and the downs. It's going to happen. You've been doing it long enough. It's going to happen. And this, or even Trackhouse, even last week, I think we started last week's show. In the round of 8, you could be conservative as much as you want until you get to this round. It's the teams that are going to have to ratchet up but can control the aggression. Blaney, we know, was obviously a little on the aggressive side. He knew he had to be, and it caught him. Now, he's got to be even more aggressive to come out of that hole. So that's where we are, and that's a strategy play almost now. That's something that it's now a strategy call that we need. It's a little wrinkle. It's like, well, I didn't think about that. But yeah, now if we be conservative, it will work for a while. But is conservative going to win the championship? No, it's going to eventually catch up. Look at Chase Briscoe again. He's been conservative, was even more conservative again this round, I think, just to see where he stands, another top 5. Look at where he's at. Let's let others falter.
Yeah.
And we'll see where Chase Elliott, William Byron had bad days. Christopher Bell got caught up in a crash, not of his doing. Brian Blaney got caught out, made a mistake. That's 4 of the 8 right there that were a little too aggressive. Or, in maybe Hendrick's spot, maybe they were a little too conservative.
I thought it was ridiculous, the pre-race comments. They were, and look, I don't know. You got to learn when you're the analyst and you're coming out and saying, and I don't know who it was. I don't know. I think it might have been the crew chief. I think it was Elliott's crew chief. He was referencing about being in 20th place, but we can still win. I still feel confident that we have a winning car. We can still win this race. When we talked last week and you went down the laundry list of reasons, even from Chase Elliott's own mouth, about why he didn't feel that they were going to do very well this week. They start 20th. Right there. It's there for the showing. He's not going to have a good week. Everybody knows it. And then just before the race starts, you come on and give us some sort of quote about the crew chief saying that you think you have a good chance to win this race, when the crew chief had to know you had no chance.
Yeah, they knew all along. And you look at, he started 20th and finished 21st. He didn't gain anything. William Byron the same way. It's bad when you're in the playoffs and your top finisher is Noah Gragson, who's in Bowman's car. He's the top. He didn't even have a top 10. Yeah. He was 11th. So
it's crazy.
I think, I'm just speculating here, but we talked about being aggressive and not. Maybe like we talked, that Elliott just needed a top 15 to get through. Like, hey, a couple of these are the playoff points. Maybe they just weren't aggressive enough. Maybe they played it too conservative and they came out of there at the 20. Because they just kind of looked, they just didn't look like they had speed. They just kind of just looked like they were there. Well, that wasn't quite good enough. You need to be a little bit better.
They're right back in the pack like everybody else. And look, nobody is safe except for Logano. Nobody. Not Chastain.
The Mulligan's now
not
gone.
Elliott.
Yep, Elliott's Mulligan, like we talked about last week, is gone.
Yes.
That went to Vegas. Now here at Homestead, you probably need a top 10 to feel good going into Martinsville. If not, because what happens if one of the 4 below the cut line win? Now that's 2 spots out taking the championship for going to Martinsville. And if he finishes outside the top 15 again, which he very well could, which he warned could happen, he might be below the cut line going to Martinsville or right barely above it, because Hamlin's really good, and we'll talk about him when we get to our picks. He's really good at Homestead. He's on the cut line right now. He can move up. Byron won there last year. He's the first spot below. Blaney's good at Homestead, and we saw some good things out of him last week before the crash. So it's far from over. His mulligan's now gone. So now it's to me, this is where it gets really interesting these next 2 weeks.
Yep. Well, look, speaking of Homestead, by the way, just to, again, let everybody know, so you are now, I think you're all of a sudden, you went from being down 1,000 to now being up 400.
Yep.
That's how, but again, now you're the one saying, I could have a bad week and it could all go away. Even CJ still has a chance if we both falter and he has a huge race coming up. So it's still, we still have a ways to go. Nobody made any changes this week. So we're still all going with the same drivers. Taking a look at the race at this track, the thing is that we haven't seen it yet. So
nope.
Yes, there are similarities to Darlington. Okay, we can use that in our handicapping tools and put that in the equation. But the fact is, we have not been on this track with this new car, so we have no idea what is going to happen on Sunday. And I mean, look, last year in the old car, Byron won from the 31st position. So now that's keeping in mind that there's only been 3 winners at Homestead ever that have started outside the top 15 since 2009, since 99, the first race. And by the way, when I realized it was 99, it kind of, it brought back memories because I was like, oh, that's right. That's the reason I got into NASCAR. Because I was back in South Florida on doing my radio shows, and I was in the radio industry back then. And I remember like 2000 as the year. That's the memory of me starting out in NASCAR. So that must have been the reason, because they were just getting NASCAR into Florida and it was all sorts of media attention. So that's really it. But anyway, 14 of the 23 winners have started in the top 5 and 7 in the top 2. So it says at Homestead, with the old cars at least, you want track position, except for the fact, and it's interesting. But just as we segue to Hamlin, the favorite of this race, and I don't know how many were because of the non-qualifying reasons, but Hamlin's been on the pole in this race 5 straight races and 6 of the last 7. I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah, and you got to think last year and the year before would have been COVID era where they didn't qualify, which would help. But yeah, he's a really good qualifier there, and he had some interesting quotes leading into this, or after last week, leading into this week, that they've got to qualify better. They've got a problem on their hand because one, qualifying means a lot here, is like the stats show. Qualifying's been a lot here on the season. I mean, you look at the recent winners: 6th, 20th at Bristol, which that all hell broke loose there. 4th, 16th, Talladega. 8th and 5th. You look at Darlington earlier in the year. Logano won from the pole. Hamlin starting spots in recent weeks: 22nd, 19th, 11th, 25th, 4th, 8th, 3rd, so 3 good ones, 24th, and then 31st. That's not going to get it done. He's got to be better on Saturdays, and he took ownership. He's like, me and his crew chief got to figure this out, because if we're going to do what we want to do and get the Phoenix, then we've got to qualify better on Saturdays.
Especially at this track where they've always qualified well.
Exactly. So that's a big thing to watch on Saturday. Like you said, he's been very good at qualifying there in the past. His qualifying stats have dipped on the season. The whole difference, though, is for us on the outside, we only look at Darlington because, like you said, that's the only spot they've been to. These teams, comparable. These teams just tested here a few weeks ago. Actually, probably about a month ago by now. So they've got some data to come with. So I think that might help them, plus the Darlington, like they said. So Logano and his crew chief, Paul Wolf, made note that the biggest reason of their turnaround at Texas, they ran better. Remember, here in Vegas, they win, is because of that test. They learned a lot at that test that you can fly some 1.5 mile track. So if that's the case, they said Blaney was really strong at that test, then he might be one to watch this weekend.
Yeah.
Hamlin was pretty good.
As long as something doesn't go wrong.
Pit crew, something like that.
Yeah. By the way, Ford has only 1 win in the last 11 races at Homestead. Happened to be Logano when he won the championship back in 2018. So there's that. But again, it's a new track. It's a new car at the track. So that could definitely come into play. Okay, so Hamlin, who does have a second place finish at Darlington, is the favorite, as well he should be. Besides all those poles, he does have 3 wins out of 17 races. So yeah, he should be the favorite, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he was
7-1's good. 7-1's good.
It is for a guy that won in 2020 there.
Yeah.
I mean, he just won a couple years ago. Yeah. One could say one of his better tracks is Darlington in general. He's won the Southern 500 multiple times. He wins the Xfinity race there all the time. He was top 5 in both Darlington races this year. He was good at the test, from what I understand. So yeah, I think for him to be the favorite, and you can get him at 7-1 as a favorite, it's a good bargain right there.
He's been the most consistent driver without winning in the playoffs so far.
Exactly.
So,
yep.
I mean,
and he knows the win gets him the championship for. And
imagine if he just qualifies in the top 10. I mean, come on. I mean, he's got a really good chance of winning.
He does, and the fact that you can get him at 7-1 to me is, because he should probably be 5-1.
He will if he sits on the pole again.
Now, yeah, that might even drop 4-1 at that point. So yeah, get him early while you can.
All right. So as far as our picks, we had 5.
Five. Five picks the same. So obviously, I'm going to assume Hamlin.
Yes.
Reddick.
No. CJ did not take Reddick.
Blaney.
Yes.
Larson.
No.
Byron.
Yes. You're the only one that took Larson.
Trying to think. That's three then. Who did I go longer?
No more favorites.
I'd say it had to be probably longer shots. Jones? I think he was way back there.
Yes.
Okay, there's four. So one more. Almirola?
No. Let's not go too crazy.
Okay, not that far.
No, not that far.
Then.
Even though you and I did take Haley.
Briscoe?
Yes.
Okay, there it is.
So those are the five. And we mentioned Hamlin at the top. Reddick. Yeah, I'm surprised CG did not take Reddick, because if Reddick's name was Marquis, he should be 5-1 in this race.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, he's like, this is his track. There's nothing better than this, or this type of track even, because he was second and third at Darlington earlier this year, to go along with second and fourth before this year, when he wasn't even the Tyler Reddick that he is now, which was impressive. And he's got 2 wins in 4 Xfinity Series races.
Yeah, he's good in everything there. And like you said, you mentioned Darlington, and really, if not for that late race caution, with both Darlington, the Southern 500, and Eric Jones kind of inherited the lead, he might have won that too. And he's coming off of a pole, so it's not like he doesn't have good speed, which is a 1.5 mile track last week, 1.5 mile track this week. Granted, you can't compare the two closely, but it's a similar package. So we just talked about how good starting spots are for there, and you look at Reddick's starting spots, obviously, lately, gosh, you have to go all the way back to Indy on the road course. He started the top 4 rows every week, -2.
Wow.
Times.
Well, if you want to take him now, because those odds might come down if he's on the pole.
Yep, and he very well could be. It might be him and Hamlin on the front row. I would not be shocked.
Blaney. So we all took Blaney. The only thing that I was concerned with Blaney was, to tell you the truth, I don't think he deserves to be the third choice.
I don't either.
And I was bothered by that, because I thought I was going to get 12-1 on him. But so I had to put money on him, but I wasn't going to put a whole lot at 9-1. Yeah, I mean, yes, look, we know he can go fast. We're seeing it. Even last week, there was no reason to believe that he was just all of a sudden going to do something, but he did. So we know he could do that again. You mentioned he tested well here. He did dominate for a little bit in 2020 when he finished third. So he does have some history here. He's been pretty good here in his career in the Xfinity Series. So he has good moments at this racetrack, and I would expect him to go well. I just don't like the fact he's the third choice.
Yeah, I think he was a little high. But again, I wasn't going to punt on him still being 9-1.
Yes.
Because like you said, he has the capability to get a top 5, but also didn't like he was 13th in both Darlington races this year either.
Yeah,
and
true.
So I'm basically, and the only reason, other than the 9-1, because I didn't like 9-1, but I also wasn't going to punt on him for that. The other main reason I took him was because of that test. All the drivers were raving about how good he was, but it's hard to take stock in it because none of us saw it with our own eyes.
Yes.
So we don't really know. But if they say he was good 9 times out of 10, the drivers they say are good usually are. So I'm like, I think that could have inflated his number because the drivers were saying that. Maybe they put him at 9-1, but all year he's been between 12 and 15-1. I just question why now all of a sudden
it may not be a good thing for him to qualify well and be at the front, because just look, I wasn't happy when the one thing I said to myself was, as soon as he won second stage and I was still feeling good, it hit me. Oh no, he won the second stage. That's probably not a good thing. That's what we've been saying all season.
It is. So, if you go back to Loudon, we're talking mid-July, the driver to win the second stage has won the race once.
So
the whole time.
You'd rather just qualify 8 to 15 and just chill out for the first 2 stages and then get him late. That's what you want to do.
3 of the last 5 races, again, these are playoff races, the race winner at the end did not even score a stage point in the second stage. Three of the
That
last
means
5.
they're not even in the top 10 going in.
Not in the top 10.
Yeah. So, Chet, now we've got a whole list of drivers at 5-1, which I actually stood away from all 5. CJ took Chastain, Kyle, and Elliott. You took Kyle, Larson, and Logano. So the only one that the two that you didn't take, Chastain and Elliott. But Chastain, yeah, I could see why. I mean, I was like, whoa, Chastain does not have. Now, look, pre this year, he wasn't any good, so whatever. But then Darlington, nothing. And the only thing that you do see is his best races at Homestead were his last 2 in the Xfinity Series. And we know that he's just a better driver anyway. So, yeah, I do. I'm not. I would probably pick him out of the 5, out of 10-1. But I just decided to stay away altogether. Why did you pass?
Darlington, I mean, yes, he wrecked while leading the second stage, but it's like you still have to go through the whole race. He could do the same thing at Homestead, and his 2 finishes there were 30th and 20th. And I feel like he's in a good enough position right now as the top driver on points. Logano's in, so you don't really count him. You go to the next guy on points. He needs to play it somewhat conservative, don't you think?
Does Ross Chastain know how to play conservative, though?
That, I think, will get him in trouble. I think that could put him out of line. It's like, do I think he's going to win this race? No, I do not, especially for 10-1. Like, there's better drivers behind him. And then Elliott, to me, 10-1 is almost a farce. I have no idea what they were thinking when 6 of his last 8 finishes have been like 11th or worse on the season. He openly said he's not going to be good at this track. He never typically is good at this track. 21st his last time out. You look at Darlington, he was 5th and 36th this year. He's never won at Darlington, and he's never won at Homestead. I don't know why that's all going to change now. I feel like the momentum is against them right now. So both of them at 10-1 kind of let it open. Logano, do I think he'll win 2 in a row? Probably not. I think they're focused.
Yeah, that was the main reason for me. If he did not win, he would be an obvious choice this week, considering how well he raced at Darlington. And the fact he's had some success here, I would have definitely made him one of my top plays. But in this crazy season, I mean, has anyone won 2 in a row?
It's been a while. I think somebody did. I can't remember who now. How about Harvick? Harvick did in August. That's it.
Oh, yeah. Of all drivers, Kevin Harvick won back-to-back races. He's the only one.
It's not for the test. I probably would not have taken Logano. The only reason I'm taking him for that reason is he has data to bring with him. So it's like they could focus all week on Phoenix, knowing that we've got a notebook here that we've already know we're bringing with us.
What should be his strategy now that he's got a win?
Honestly, normal rounds, I'd say go get you another win and get you 5 more playoff points, but it doesn't matter anymore because you can't take the playoff points with you, the championship fourth. It's mano a mano. So to me, the strategy would be to just go out and just win to keep momentum going. Just go win in another race. Or you're going to help Blaney get there. If I were them, I would also be willing to, you know what, let me test what Blaney needs. I want a teammate in Phoenix with me.
So that also helps Blaney.
Which, yeah, because if Blaney wins, then Blaney's obviously in.
Sure.
So if I were their game plan, like because it's a lot easier to race your teammate in Phoenix than it is to have 3 different guys against you. At least you know, hey, this guy's going to run me clean. We're all in the betterment for this organization. So you could, in theory, say, hey, we get to Homestead. Blaney, I know you're working on this setup. We've got a very little practice. Do you want to throw one on my car for this short practice?
Absolutely.
Session? I will try out and give you the data you need.
Yeah.
So they could go that route. We can.
Well, what else is there? What else is there for them points-wise or anything? What advantage do they have?
They've got nothing other than just another trophy.
Okay. Is that something that they should change as far as the playoff situation? Otherwise, what do you have for incentive?
You really don't. You'd have to find something because monetary isn't going to be it for these teams. It'd be more like you get a better pit selection in the last race or something like that to entice them. Yeah, because if you look, like you said, at his Homestead stats, he faltered the last couple of years, but before that, 5 straight top 6s.
Sure.
He won at Darlington in the spring race, which to me is more comparable because of the day race, but he was 4th in the Southern 500. He's coming off of a win. Yeah. They got a lot from the test. And the fact that you're getting him for the same odds as you do Chase Elliott is, to me, was bizarre. I thought, for one, maybe he'd be 9-1 and Blaney would be 10-1.
Yeah,
but getting a good number for those stats, and I thought it's one of those that's too obvious that, like, is he really going to win 2 in a row? No, I'll punt on him. But then he's going to win. You're like, it was right in front of me. Why did I not take him? So that's the only reason.
Well, Elliott is still a decent fantasy play.
Yeah,
because he's never finished outside the top 15 at Homestead.
Yeah, I just don't see him winning.
Yeah, that's
the
difference.
That's the difference with this, is you got to win. So
why did you go with Kyle and Larson, Kyle Busch and Kyle Larson, considering both of them did not fare well at Darlington and Darlington, excuse me. And Larson's never won at Homestead, and Kyle Busch is just Kyle Busch. Now, look, the fact is he's definitely put together nice little back-to-back third-place finishes. So there's an eye-opening there, no question. And he does have 9 top 10s in his last 10 at Homestead with 5 top 5s, a runner-up, and 2 wins. But again, this is this year's Kyle Busch, and even though he's got to win, which is another reason why I kind of punted on him, was like, is Kyle Busch going to win a second time this year, even though the first win was a dirt track and all that nonsense? But I don't know. It happened to him again last week. They get into some sort of mess, and I don't know how he was able to rebound and finish third, but that's the season we're having.
Yep, and I like him in the fact that his new goal is obviously, because it's a monetary bonus the farther you go up the standings. He's now within 41 points of a top 10. He's been there every year since 2013 as far as top 10 points finish. So I think he sees that light. He wants to win one more time before the season's over, naturally. They're like, I got to need another one.
Sure.
This is a good track for him. Like you mentioned, his stats. I mean, he led 120 laps in 2019 in his win. And I look at Darlington, and his finishes say one thing, but the actual race says the other.
But that's the way he's been racing all season, though.
Exactly. So for him, I'm thinking the luck is starting to turn back his way.
Maybe.
Third the last 2 weeks. He hasn't had the last 2 times last 2 races that he has consecutive top 5s are May 29th and June 5th. It's been that long. You could kind of see, like we talked about, we were waiting for this moment, his future to be solidified, and then we'll see if maybe Kyle Busch comes back. He's starting to come back. I think he wants to stick it to this team to win one more time. I feel like that's a driving focus for him. Like, look, I'm going to win you another race so you can see what you're missing for not signing me. I could see he's that type of guy. And you look at the first Darlington race, he was running top 5. Remember that big crash in turn 2? He just was an innocent bystander in the middle. The second Darlington race, his power steering belt came off. Remember why he was leading with 20 to go? He was leading. So the bad luck to me seems to now kind of run its course on the good luck. The tire falling. And so I thought, for those odds, he's good at Darlington. He's really good at Homestead. I'll roll the dice. And then Kyle Larson, he's like Reddick. If you remember the fact we kept playing, this was his track. And you look at him in the past here, he wasn't in the championship 4 in that heyday, and he was always just kind of, I'll lead a bunch of laps and then get out of the way in the end. He led 132 laps in 2016. He led 145 laps in 2017. He led 45 more laps in 2018. 2019, I think something happened, like engine blew or something, because he wasn't even in the final round there. And then 2021, he finished 4th.
But don't you think it's about up here? Just like we talked about last week. And then sure enough, something happens. He started it, okay?
Yep.
And I must say this. I should say this, because we talked about it before. Matter of fact, I even said it. Sooner or later, he's gonna need to get a whooping, and that's exactly what happened. Because he's been doing this to a lot of drivers, including Chase Elliott. So it was Bubba's story, no question. But let's not forget, Kyle deserved it. Kyle deserved to get somebody to go up in his face, to push him around, just to kind of maybe put a little second thought in his head the next time he wants to go ahead and just drive as hard as he has been. I'm not saying he shouldn't, but sometimes when you're now a champion, I think you should kind of hold yourself a little bit differently. That's all. That's my point with that. But then he goes out, like I said, and maybe his head wasn't on. So that's why if I'm thinking about Larson or Busch, I definitely think Busch would be the way to go.
I would, but and Larson, is just his past history has been so good here. I was like, that's why I couldn't differentiate between the two, and I took them both. And you got to think too, for Larson and Logano, another motivation for them to run this race is, yes, Logano's running a championship 4. Larson's been eliminated. This race is back in the playoffs next year. So, and we don't go there again from this weekend until that weekend next year. You can use this, run this race normally, get a lot of data to know what to come back for. So, yeah, and plus if Larson wins, he keeps the playoff spot from another guy taking it from Chase Elliott or William Byron. If he wins, he doesn't let somebody else sneak.
Yeah, well, he might be taking one away from those guys.
And we've seen the playoffs. One could make a case between Reddick and Larson and Kyle. Even Truex, although I punted on him this year because he hasn't been good this year. These are some of the best tracks for drivers not in the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
So this could be a week you don't see a championship-eligible driver win this race.
Well, that's the reason I stayed away from those guys. I stayed away from Larson and Kyle because of that. I stayed away from Logano because he won last week. Chastain, we talked about his history. And then Elliott, there's a reason not to take him at 10-1. So, there was all just reasons that I just said, nah, you know what? But you see, you decided to put a little bit of money on Kyle and Larson, but you did not put money on Christopher Bell.
Yeah, I kind of ran out, and I just feel like his luck just seems, like I said about Kyle's turning around, it just...
Yeah, but that's the thing is we don't know that because of the fact that one week in this playoffs, you have a bad, you go from the first to the bottom, and the next week you're back at the top. You just don't know.
You don't. There's a lot of reason to take him this week, right? I mean, he was 6th and 5th.
6th and 5th at Darlington, yeah.
And he's only raced twice here, and neither one of them he's actually got a chance to qualify.
And he seems to believe that this is going to be a good track for him. He said it.
And it could be, because if you look at the guys that have been good here are all former dirt drivers. Reddick grew up on dirt. Briscoe loves his track, dirt. Larson was really good here, dirt. Gordon and Stewart were always good, they're dirt. Carl Edwards was good, they're dirt. It's like you have it because you could run the wall and slide it in the corners. That's why he's so good at Darlington. So I would not be shocked Christopher Bell wins, and I wouldn't be shocked if he's facing a must-win at Martinsville like he just was last round either. So it could go either way, but his stats are, granted, very early here because he only raced 2 Cup races, but Darlington leads to believe he's pretty good.
And again, it wasn't his fault that he wrecked last week.
No, not at all. No. He was just in his bystander.
Yeah. Byron is also 12-1. We all took him. He's the defending champ, and he was also 9th the year before that. And he had only 1 top 5 in his lone Xfinity appearance. And his Darlington results were okay. So considering you're getting 12-1, I felt why not? Maybe he is, because he's actually been okay in the playoffs. He's been pretty consistent.
And you got to remember with him, the Darlington too, the spring race, he started on the front row. I think Logano won the pole, and he was on the front row with him. And remember, Byron was leading until the last few laps, and Logano kind of squeezed them into the wall, if you remember right.
Yep.
Or he would have finished second. Logano had a better car. He was going to pass him, but they had that mix. The worst case, he was going to finish second. He had the second best car that day. And if you remember Darlington in the fall, just last month, he was coming out of a slump. That's why, but he was still good. Remember, he won a stage.
Yeah, stage
one.
A
lot of laps early. So yeah, his Darlington stats again to me don't tell the whole story for him either. So you're getting a pretty good bargain for a guy that should have been finished better than what his stats show at Darlington, and is the defending race winner here. And he could use a win. He's six points below the cut line. So
I would probably, to tell you the truth, I'd probably rank the 3 guys that I have: Blaney, Byron, Bell. I'd probably go Bell, Byron, Blaney myself, because I do think Bell is. I think Bell's going to go well, but I do believe Byron is right up there, and I like them both based on the fact they're 12-1 over Blaney. That's 9-1.
Yeah, I was shocked that Blaney's ahead of both of them.
Yeah,
to me they should flip flop almost, but
yeah,
we'll take it what they're giving to us.
Harvick. So I was the only one who went with Harvick, and I was surprised about that because I'm getting 18-1 on a driver that has 18 top 10s and 21 career races at Homestead. I mean, nobody's got that going. He's won this race before. More than half of his results are in the top 5, including last year. He was top 5 at Darlington this year. Why wouldn't? And Harvick does not look like he's bored or just wants to get, punt on next season. Looks like that couple of things go his way, he's going to be right there.
Yeah, I just didn't like him at that number. I was salivating in the mouth for him to be like 30-1, like he always has. And I'm like, wait a minute. He's only got 1 top 5 finish since Watkins Glen. That was the drawing point for me. I'm like, well, wait a minute. He's not been, again, it could go either way this season. He just seems to consistently struggle to actually win the race. So I thought he's not really been in the top 5 much. It could go either way at Homestead. And I just feel like even last week, like he backed out of the deal with Larson and Logano. Remember, right? He was the third driver in that, and he was smart enough to, I'm backing out of this. I just get the feeling you might see Harvick dominate. I think he'll win a stage. He'd be a good pick to win a stage because I think he'll run up front early. But I just wanted some of these playoff guys or some of these guys that are been better at both Homestead and Darlington that have more to fight for are going to end up ahead in the end.
Yeah, keep in mind, we started with 3 non-playoff drivers winning, and now we've got 4 straight playoff drivers winning, including 3 that are still in the playoffs.
Yep.
So that tide has turned. Wallace, CJ was the only one to put money on Wallace. I'm not sure why. He does have 1 top 10 at Darlington, especially after last week. I'm not sure I don't know where his head's going to be, but
I don't even know if he'll be racing.
Of why to go with Wallace.
Toyota's good there.
Okay.
That'd be about it.
All right.
I don't fully buy he'll be racing on Sunday. that might be all for naught.
That's true. And I'll have to go looking for a driver on my fantasy team.
Yep.
And I might go with the next with the guy, not next, but the guy that's 30-1 that you took, Noah Gragson.
Yeah. Go to one. That might be one that you might want to. Honestly, I think you're probably good that nobody. I can't speak for CJ. I think he'd agree. I don't know if anybody picked Bubba up if you want to just go ahead and do that now. Grayson's a really good pick. And if you look at Martinsville, he's a good pick there in a sense. What car won Martinsville's playoff race last year? That one. Who won the Xfinity Martinsville playoff race last year? Grayson. He's really good at Martinsville, and he's even better at Homestead, and he's in Bowman's car. So he's 11th place, a quiet 11th. I think people fail to realize the top finishing Hendrick driver is the guy that just kind of walked in the room with him. And Homestead is a track that he should have probably won 4 or 5 straight Xfinity races at. He's just been snake bitten. Something Ian has always taken after dominating the race. Now you're giving him a Hendrick car.
Yeah. And the only thing with me was I know it's been a weird season, but can an Xfinity driver, full-time win a Cup race? I mean, that's really going parity.
It is, and if he wasn't in the Hendrick car, I would say be
sure.
tough.
I get that.
But
I get it.
I also think it shows a lot of what odds makers think of Alex Bowman when a full-time Xfinity driver hops in his ride and gets the same odds.
Pretty much.
That he typically does. Yeah. Like that's because Ty Gibbs has barely been that odds. The whole time he's been filling for Kurt Busch, and you put Grayson in what is like 4th or 5th start, and he's now 30-1.
By the way, who do you think is going to win the Xfinity Series?
The race or the championship?
Championship.
I'm going to say Noah. I think Noah's going to get it done. I feel like he'll win this week, the Xfinity race. I really do. And he's really good at Phoenix. I think he just won there in the spring. Yeah, he just won there in the spring race too, if I'm not mistaken. So it just feels like his year. So I'd side his direction.
Yeah.
And plus, that's the other thing. He's going to be racing on the same track the day before. So he's going to have plenty of laps under his belt.
Yeah, he's led over 200 laps in 4 Xfinity Series races, which is pretty impressive for an Xfinity driver. Now, we all took Briscoe, and why not? Not only is he hot ever since I dropped him on my fantasy team, but he has 3 top 10s and 2 top 5s plus a win in the 4 Xfinity Series races. The only thing that we have to be a little bit questionable about is that his Darlington finishes were just not very good. Yep. And that's the main thing. Is he going to win, or is it more of another top 5, top 10 driver?
Yeah. Going in, until I saw him say this is his favorite track and I did a little more digging, I wasn't even going to touch him. Because, yeah, you look at Darlington, 20th and 27th. And he wasn't great on this track last year in the Cup Series. No. But it's his favorite track for a reason. He runs well there. His very first truck win was here.
Oh, okay.
He won an Xfinity Series race there in 2020. He won an Xfinity Series race at Darlington in 2020. They seem to finally be finding their groove. I mean, 4 straight top 10s, 2 of them in the top 5.
Sure.
I feel like they're good enough. They've shown now. I don't see mistakes taking them out. I feel like they're good enough to just kind of be there now.
Unless their luck runs out, like every other driver's luck runs out sooner or later.
And I just wonder if this week, like, you know what, this could be the potential of more attrition. This track ages tires. We've seen what Darlington did with a lot of power steering and all that kind of jazz.
Wouldn't that be funny if he won the race and got to the Final Four?
It could happen.
Good.
I think that would be a wild way, but that's why you're getting him at 25-1 like that. So I thought,
that's that. Yeah, that's why we all have him. Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of have to take him.
Yes.
So that's the reason I went his direction too.
Yeah, I actually put the most money on him. I put 30 on him. So the hot.
Yeah, ride the hot hand.
You got to go with a hot driver. Yeah.
Yep.
Especially where he's won before. Okay, Suarez, by the way, at 30-1. I was almost going to put money on Suarez, but I just kind of ran out of money with those types of drivers myself, and he didn't have great results at Darlington. But he did dominate in 2016, winning the Xfinity Series race.
Yeah, and I thought about him because the only sense was same thing with Chastain. I thought about both of them because Trackhouse is kind of, you got to think of them as like a Miami base with Pitbull as their co-owner, and this is like their homecoming race. If you think of their homeowner, team owner, other than Nashville being kind of the home race for him because that's where Justin Marks was wanting to move the team. But then you look at, is he really going to win?
Yeah.
Is he going to win the second to last race of the round of 8?
And that would be 2 wins this season.
Yeah, and you look at his recent results, and he hasn't had a top 5 since Watkins Glen. That's his only top 5 since Loudon. Like, you kind of got to show me a little more to think I'm actually going to pick you to win. So, yeah, same way. I just kind of, it was intriguing at first looking at it, and then, like, Briscoe and dig a little more deeper. That was one like, might want to punt on him.
Yeah, well, if you look at Cindric, Cindric does not have a top 10 on a non-road course or super speedway, or like Atlanta, since Nashville when he finished 7th. And that's kind of the reason, because if you look at it, he's got 5 top 10s in 5 Xfinity Series races with 3 top 5s and a runner-up. He's led almost 200 laps there in the Xfinity Series. But he just it's just not working out for him right now.
No, and again, with his car, he's a rookie, so you maybe not get as much feedback from. But if I'm Penske, I am all hands on deck to get Ryan Blaney.
Absolutely.
If that means utilizing Cindric's car in some areas that you need to develop, and like you said, he just hasn't been as consistent on normal ovals. That, for those odds, it's not worth. I mean, if he was like 80-1, I'd probably think about it, but not where he's at right now.
The 50-1 drivers, AJ, Jones, and McDowell. And again, we all took Jones. I also took McDowell. Jones, why not? He's got 4 top 10s in the 7 playoff races, including a win at Darlington.
Yep.
And he's hot, and he's got the Darlington win. The only thing, though, he doesn't really do much at Homestead, but maybe the Darlington win with the new car will change that. And he's 50-1. And McDowell, 6th last year here, and 2 top 10s in Darlington. So I said, I'll put some more money on McDowell just like Jones.
Yep, I ran out of money, or I wasn't going to choose McDowell for the same reason. And you got to look, they both, from what I heard, were good at the test. So they got some data to bring with them, and it seems like they're around the top 11 or 12 every week now. It just seems like they're there.
Yeah.
So you go off strategy in some way, or some big names take themselves out.
By the way, if you look at Eric Jones, I mean, Eric Jones could be a playoff driver next year.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I think he's got it right now. If you look at what he's got it. And not only be a playoff driver, he can make noise. If he just does what he's doing this playoffs, he's faring better, if you look at it, other than recently, than what Chase Briscoe has. So there's no reason to think that Eric Jones cannot potentially be a round of 8 driver just if he just replicates what he's doing this year's playoffs and finds a way to win one of the regular season races.
Him and Bubba.
Yeah, Bubba. And I even look at it like Allmendinger. There's no reason to believe he can't make some noise. I mean, he's a good road course guy, clearly. And you look at what he's done in the season. I almost, again, took him this week, but he's never won even Xfinity there. 7th, 2nd, 7th, 4th, 9th. Those are his last few Cup Series starts. He's full-time next year. So we're talking about guys that are faring well in the playoffs. Justin Haley's another one we'll get to, that these guys can be in the playoffs next year. That's why this car, you don't want to change it too much.
Sure.
Look at this parity. Look at these names that we're talking that could be factors in this race a year from now.
Yeah, and McDowell, the only thing he has to stay away from are he has too many results like in the 20s and the 30s. He's got to knock that off. If he knocks that off, he could be a playoff driver next year.
Yeah, I mean, because if you look, he's you take those few that he's had recently. If he just, like you said, he just needs to get a win in the first 26.
He got up to such a bad start.
Yep, get your win, get into the playoffs, and then in the playoffs, just kind of do what you've been doing.
Yeah.
It'll get you. Oddly enough, it'll get them maybe even out of the first round. These aren't McDowell's in the playoffs, so that's the first round.
No, it's not anymore.
Nope.
You know, I wish somebody, when they get a chance to talk to someone like Ross Chastain, would just ask him, Ross, seriously, you didn't think you had? I know you guys had no idea what was going on with this new car, but you didn't think you were going to. Hey, come on. I mean, just history tells us that you probably would have been lucky to have like 4 top 10s this year with the old car. I mean, so they're never going to admit that probably because they're egos. But come on. Do they really? I wonder if they really think about that. I wonder if they go, oh, I can't believe the fortune that I had, that I stepped into this car at the right year.
Right. Yeah.
Just
not only right year.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So, which is just, again, it just shows you that there's so many drivers that would have nothing to drive for on a weekly basis that are in the run for a championship.
Yeah, exactly. And here he is. And again, a solid race this week. He was 5th in Martinsville in the spring. He does the same. Well, he's probably taken that wild card spot. He's in the championship 4 in this first year with Trackhouse. So that just shows you that him paying his dues has worked out for him in his long run.
Yeah. And that's why I really wish that they would give what's his name another chance. Who's the one from last year that never won, that came close to winning like 5 times? I think he's in the Truck Series.
Benedetto.
Yeah. I mean, come on. He's the opposite. He's like, I couldn't have just had another year at the Cup Series with the new car. Because, come on, Benedetto with the new car might even be a playoff driver.
I think he wins this year at some point with that 21 car.
Absolutely. All right, Dylan's 80-1, and he's definitely fantasy. Put Dylan on your fantasy team this week because his average finish in 8 races at Homestead is 12.5. So I did not put any money on him. Nobody did, but I think he's a very good fantasy driver.
That's why I think he's a fantasy play than actual race win. I like his teammate better.
Yeah.
But a solid top 12, top 15, I think we'll get at him.
Well, yeah, that's what it says. And he's also got back-to-back top 10s coming in. 2 10th place finishes. All right, the 100-1 shots. So you got Almirola, Buescher, and Haley. I did put on Haley. So I put 8 on Haley. You put 6 on Haley. And Haley finished 3rd earlier this year at Darlington. Has 2 top 5s over his last 4 races. Has 7 straight top 20s in the playoffs. So if there's a time to take Haley, it's this week. So that's why he was a no-brainer. What about Buescher and Almirola?
Yeah, Buescher, he won the first stage last year, and he's good on these age tracks. He's usually runs well.
He led 57 laps last year. Yeah.
Yep, and it's the only reason he didn't stay up there is on the restart in the second stage. He was running 4th, I believe, and he got squeezed and had some fender damage, and it just lost his handling.
By the way, is the track going to change based on the temperature or the time of day that they're racing?
It usually does when it starts during the day and ends at night, but they're a 2:30 start.
Oh, so
I think
because it's not a championship race anymore, that's not going to come into the equation.
It's going to end. Yeah, it'll end during daytime hours unless we get. I don't know what the weather forecast is. You haven't looked unless you get a chance of rain or something to delay it. It should start in day and end during the day, so you shouldn't have that factor.
It is South Florida, so watch out for the weather.
Never know. He just has been typically good on age services. Atlanta in the past, remember Busher was always good at. So I thought for 100 to 1, why not? Almirola, he's on the Logano every other year string as Logano was in championships. He's that way at Homestead, 9th and 5th. And then he had 22nd, 30th between that. So he's due for another top 10. And it seems like Harvick, we talked about being good there. Briscoe's favorite track. Those are his teammates. He's got some notes to go off of. So, I mean, you get a Stewart-Haas guy that can win at 100 to 1. Might as well throw a few bucks his way.
Yeah, and that's the reason I put Dylan and Almirola on my fantasy teams last week. Okay, so and then Burton, by the way, at 250 to 1, won the 20 race, but in the Xfinity Series, but he's only led 3 laps there. So that's why I said no, but I did not say no to Custer. Because at 500 to 1, in his last 3 Xfinity Series races, he's finished second, and first, leading 292 laps. And hey, it's a crazy season, so why not put a few bucks on Cole Custer at 500?
Yep, it was the one week that I didn't take him. He's going to win. And plus, again, he's a Stewart-Haas driver, and we just talked about his job status.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Imagine if he wins, he'll go, take that job status, baby.
Still want to put Priest in front of me? Yeah. Yep, take that. Plus, with all that controversy about him last week, I think it would be fitting if he comes out and wins.
Yeah, that'd be funny. All right, so yeah, imagine if Tony Stewart's there and he's got to go shake his hand in the winner's circle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, how's that going to look? I don't think Tony will be there. He seems so mad at NASCAR. I don't think he's going to even show up. So you may not have to worry about him being there.
Okay, get top 3 drivers.
Top 3 probably. Hamlin? Yep, Reddick, and I'm gonna. Yeah. I was going to go to Byron.
That or Kyle or Larson or Logano?
We'll say Byron just because he should run most. So we'll go Byron. Yep.
Yeah, I'd probably go Hamlin, Reddick, and Bell. All right, so that'll wrap up Homestead week. We have Martinsville week next week. That will be a playoff round ender. And then it's on to championship week, when CJ comes back for the final time, and we all talk one more time together for the rest of the season. So looking forward to it. RaceReviewOnline.net. That's where you're going to have all the stories. You already have the pre-race media notes for this week's race, correct?
Correct. Yep. And then we'll have a link of this and all of our stories up here. A lot coming this rest of this week.
And obviously, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done that. And please let us know your questions or comments, anything at all. Let us know, and we will definitely return your questions and might even do it on the air. So, Eric, we'll talk to you again next week. Go Hoosiers.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, not in football, but yeah.
Not this season.
No.